Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport. A overcast day in London. James has returned from his travels. It's good to see you, James. How are you on this Friday morning?
All good, Luke. Yeah, can't complain. Had a family christening holiday down in Portugal last week. So, yeah, very good indeed. And Saturday was one of the best days to be a Liverpool fan. Liverpool didn't even play, let alone lose or win. It was brilliant.
So
Come out to
James,
church
so
and,
James, let's cut to the chase. Big news from Saturday. I know the crowd. Everyone wants to hear your opinions on that masterful Paris Saint-Germain win. Talk us through it. I mean,
brilliant, wasn't it?
all jokes aside, we've got to talk slot. You must be a happy man.
Yeah, when I came out of church, I was saying there that my phone was just going off crazy kind of thing. Look, first of all, we've got to give credit to Arne Slot. He delivered the 20th title, only the second Premier League titles for Liverpool. And as a human being, you've got to give him some credit. He came in after a legend had left, after 9 years of Jurgen Klopp. And that's not easy. We've seen it with Unai Emery at Arsenal and after Arsene Wenger. We've seen it numerous managers, countless managers after Sir Alex Ferguson, and no one's been able to do it. So fair play to him last season. And the way he handled himself with the passing of Diogo Jota and Andre Silva last summer, he handled himself brilliantly. However, results were, as we all know now, were poor. And his style of football wasn't suited to Premier League and the players weren't suited to his style of football. And eventually PSG made the right decision. I don't believe that they only told him 90 minutes before the announcement on Saturday morning. The players knew months before. And if you look at the appointment of Iraola yesterday, when did he resign? In March? There were discussions going on. We know there were discussions going on in November and December about Slot's future. Yeah, and it's the right decision. Thankfully, they haven't bottled the decision. They've made the right decision. And yeah, it's a 2-year contract for Iraola. And I don't mind it. Everyone goes, Liverpool don't sack managers. Liverpool do sack managers. They have sacked managers. They've obviously sacked Slot. They sacked Dalglish. They sacked Hodgson. They sacked Houllier. They sacked Benitez. So that myth needs to be binned out the water completely now. Always has been. Yeah, so... But it's Iraola. He has reservations about him. But every manager's a risk coming into the Premier League or coming to a bigger club, per se. And I do think that with his appointment, I think it's a better appointment than the other ones they're looking at, like a Hoynes or Pierre Large from Lens, who looks like he's going to Crystal Palace. Just because of the uniqueness of the Premier League compared to other leagues. I think you need Premier League experience to manage in England nowadays. The pace and the power is relentless. There's lots of running at high pressure. You've got to understand the league, and it's completely different to anything else you see in Europe. So having a manager who's been here for 3 years, and he understands the league, understands how it's being played, is a big plus for me. Yes, he's never managed in Europe before. He's never managed 2 games a week. He's never managed in front of more than 11,000 people when there's 60-odd thousand people. Never managed a team that's had to be expected to win every week. Not like a Bournemouth when you can almost sit back and just be the underdogs in most of the games you play, barring last season. But yeah, he's got to prove himself. But every manager's a risk. There's no ready-made replacement out there who's done it in the Premier League and done it in Europe. So yeah, I'm excited to see. They need a lot of surgery, though, Liverpool Football Club. And we've talked about it numerous times. They're going to have to spend another £400 million this summer because they need a lot of players to play his system, play his way. But yeah, I was happy when the announcement was made.
James, my immediate concern was what on earth are we going to talk about on this podcast week in, week out if you couldn't have at least a 10-minute rant on Slot still being Liverpool manager?
Yeah, and also I can't now lay Liverpool every week when Slot's been in charge yet. But Slot will probably get a decent manager's job or a head coach role in Europe. His football is probably suited to European football. Now there's been some mention about Fulham, but Fulham would be absolutely mental to employ him kind of thing that way. I see Ajax was mentioned, but the Ajax have appointed a new manager or a new head coach in the last 48, 72 hours as well. So let's see, there was some talk in the Athletic, wasn't there, about taking a Dutch national role after the World Cup. But still, he's only young. He's only 47. Why would he go there, kind of thing? I don't know. But yeah, look,
I,
we move on.
I've said before, I think it's a really interesting appointment for you. I have all the candidates there. There are no really perfect candidates, but I think he's shown something that's potentially elite. Now, the only question mark you would have, and I'd apply this back to Carrick and some of and even Alonso a little bit in terms of some of these other appointments, and that is if you were drawing up a list of the top 5 managers in world football, even the top 10 managers in world football, which is what in reality teams like your Real Madrids and Liverpools and Man Uniteds should be aiming for. We know Carrick obviously wouldn't be anywhere near that. Would Alonso be regarded as a top 10 manager in the world? I don't think he's got a body of work which would suggest he's a top 10 manager in the world. At the moment, he may well become a top 10 manager in the world. But, and that would be the only question mark against Iraola is on the body of work that he's produced. Is he a top 10 manager in the world? I'm just saying that teams like Liverpool, they're the sort of managers they should be aiming for. And you'd have to say at the moment, probably not. He has the upside of that, but there's definite risks attached to it. Although, as I said, I do like it.
Yeah, there's a risk because he hasn't managed a big club before, and the understanding of having to manage a big club is and managing egos. So look, we'll see. You just don't know, do you? You really don't know. But the clever people have appointed him. The clever people running Liverpool Football Club have appointed him. You kind of have to trust their process. You have to trust them because they are the ones in charge. So you just don't know. I mean, who else was there? They're not going to appoint Xavi Alonso. He's got the same stylistic way of Arne Slot in terms of slow build-up and place like that. Premier League's not that anymore. It's not that type of league. Sebastian Hoeneß at Stuttgart. There was rumours that they wanted him. They've spoken to him. But again, no Premier League, never managed in the Premier League before. You look at Cesc Fabregas that they spoke to in December way. Now, he's only been manager 2 years in Italy. Yes, he understands the Premier League, but he hasn't played in the Premier League for years. So there's always a risk, unless you're going to go and get someone like Luis Enrique. And Luis Enrique, let's be honest, isn't leaving Paris Saint-Germain in a hurry. With a big bag of cash in a league that he really knows he can win blindfolded for the next 10 years kind of thing. And he can go on a 3-peat, 4-peat in the Champions League. Why would you leave Paris to come and live in Formby and Liverpool kind of thing? You're not at the moment in his career.
I did see a great picture on Twitter. You've seen it many years ago, but there's a picture from the late 90s. So 97 or 98. And it's at Barcelona. And it's Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, and Luis Enrique. They've done all right for themselves.
Yeah, very much so. Exciting time for Liverpool. FSG need to put their hands in a pocket going. But Liverpool don't have many players to sell to generate funds. That's the biggest problem.
Okay, so let's perfect segue into that. So obviously, the big news this week is we knew it was happening from earlier in the week about Konate leaving. It's been on the cards really for 2 years. We've known he's out of contract or going to become out of contract. The difference 2 years ago was 2 years ago to 12 months ago, he had a brilliant 12 months in that time. And as we were in this situation this time last year, Liverpool had to make a decision this time last year and they didn't make it. Now, I don't know if Konate said that he would sign or something's changed or whether... no idea what's happened there. But Liverpool had to make a decision actually last summer in terms of his future. They couldn't let what's happened happen. Either you sign a contract last summer or you go. And you're left in a situation where he's now gone to Real Madrid. He has been poor. I think he's been really poor this year. Now, some of that hasn't been helped by the issues at right back, hasn't been helped by different goalkeepers, hasn't been helped by lack of protection in midfield. You can make all the excuses you want. There's still an awful lot of individual errors in there from him. He hasn't played anywhere near that level. But what it does do is it presents Iraola with an immediate problem. And, you know, you say Liverpool need a lot of surgery, and you look around the team, and it's amazing how many holes need to be filled, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Last summer, all they did was replace players. They lost 3 forwards, they replaced them with 3 forwards. Lost a right back, kind of replaced him with a right wing back, stroke, a nothing player in Frimpong. They got Kirkers in. So, yeah, they need a right back. They need an experienced centre back. They've got the 2 young kids, but Jacket's coming off an injury. Leone's coming off a bad ACL. And you've got Virgil, who's 35. Gomez, who's injury prone, last year of his contract. They probably arguably need 2 right backs. They need 2 wingers. And they need 2 midfielders. I mean, going back to Konate's contract, he made some comment on April the 18th, I think, about saying he's close to a new contract. He wasn't, by all accounts. He knew he was going to Real Madrid. So, look, kind of good riddance to Ibrahim Konate. Look, he's gone through a bad spell as well. He lost his father early on this year as well, kind of thing. But yeah, he's not been the same standard of player he was 18 months ago, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, Liverpool got the same issues this summer. With McAllister, his legs have gone, horrible individual, get rid anyway. But you're not going to get more than 40 million, 45, 50 million quid from him, maybe. And then you've got to look at Dominic Szoboszlai. 2 years out, you either sign a contract by the end of August, or bye-bye, or the end of July even. Because you can't be having the situation again where Liverpool Football Club hold all the power now 2 years out on his contract. Next summer, they have no power at all. And he'll just run down his contract for 2 years, and then you'll just get a big bag of money probably from a Munich or a PSG or Real Madrid or Barcelona, something like that. 400 or 500 grand a week, whatever you want to call it. So the either is you sign a contract now, or we'll look to sell you. Because you can't have this thing, Liverpool being really poor in recent years where they've let go of players on a free when they shouldn't have done. And it's winding a lot of fans up, me included.
I think one of the interesting aspects to, say, Szoboszlai is Liverpool pay some pretty decent wages, okay? But you've got to be a little bit conscious of your wage bill as well, because obviously you gave massive contracts to the likes of Van Dijk. I mean, obviously, you've managed to get out the Salah deal. There's plenty of other players in that team who are earning massive money. And, yeah, I think you always just have to be a little bit conscious of just chucking 250, 300 grand around like confetti, like some of these clubs do. Because the reality is you don't have the same revenues as some of the truly big European teams, but you're expected to compete on wages.
Yeah, we're not owned by a foreign state, are we? Like Chelsea and Newcastle and Man City. And Man United pay big wages regardless anyway.
No, but the difference with, say, Man United's, and even, obviously, we won't talk about City because that's obviously a bit of a joke. But even compared to your Real Madrids of the world, is their revenues are just that bit higher. You know, they have much bigger stadiums, for example. You know, they can. You know, I'm not saying stadiums and money generated from stadiums is the be all and end all, but it does create a lot of extra revenue.
Yeah, it does indeed. But yeah, we'll move on.
So, obviously, Liverpool need a lot of work to be done. One thing I do want to just hear your thoughts, just quickly, on all jokes aside. I haven't spoken to you on here since Arsenal Paris Saint-Germain. What were your thoughts on the game? Apart from being delighted with the result.
Cowardly football from Arteta and Arsenal Football Club. Absolutely cowards. I think I texted you and John and a few others during the game. It was almost like watching 10 men defend against... They'd have a player sent off, they'd gone 1-0 up. And then they had 10 men and they decided, okay, fair play. But they didn't, they had 11 men. And they just went into a shell. Like, what are you doing? You've got a perfect start. 1-0 up against Paris. Havertz scoring a great finish, actually. Not sure what the keeper is doing, but anyway, didn't come out and whatever. But he wasn't. Anyway. And then he just literally went into a shell kind of thing. And that was all predetermined by Arteta. And everyone knew that was going to happen. I just generally don't get it with Arteta at all. I really don't. And I mean, it was good for football that PSG won, let's be honest, because Arsenal had the easiest run to a final you're ever going to have. They played absolutely no one. Leverkusen, Sporting Lisbon, and a washed-up Atletico Madrid with their best player Alvarez injured and Simeone kind of on the way, thinking about going out. They got to a final, fair play, but in the final it was cowardly football. It really was. And they had a massive opportunity there to go and win the game when you 1-0 up and put real pressure on PSG. And the only time they really changed the way they're playing is they went direct when they brought Gyökeres on and they went long ball. And they still didn't do anything. I mean, Safanov in goal didn't have a save to make really all game. And maybe that was the tactics, trying to put some pressure on and nick a goal at the end when it was 1-1, last minute goal kind of thing. Look, I have massive reservations about Arteta. I think everyone knows about that. And if I'm Arsenal Football Club, they're not going to. They're going to give him a huge new contract, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way. If I could go and get Luis Enrique, I would have done this summer.
Well, no, okay. So, it's important to we talk about this because I touched on earlier about the top 5-10 managers in the world. Okay, we've touched on it before, but with Arteta, if Arteta came on the open market, which clubs do you think would be desperate to have him as their manager?
One club, I think. I don't even think they're a top 10 club in the world anyway.
And
Atletico Madrid.
Are you saying that Barcelona fans wouldn't enjoy watching this style of football?
No, obviously not. Bayern Munich aren't going to take him. Real Madrid aren't going to take him. United wouldn't take him. Forget about his history. United wouldn't take him. They might be stupid, but they'd be ridiculous to take him. He wouldn't be interested. Man City wouldn't even look at him, kind of thing. Don't care about his history. I just don't think he's a top-end manager. Look, he's won the Premier League. Fair play. However, there are massive red flags about Mikel Arteta. And a lot of these people saying he can now go and buy, needs to improve his forward play and get some creative players and the likes of a Rodgers or a whoever they want to play on the left wing. Still doesn't matter who they have on the left wing. Because of Arteta in charge, he's not going to play the way that Arsenal want to play, kind of thing. He just doesn't. He's never shown it under 6 years is it 7 years this November he's been there, kind of thing? 2019. So it doesn't matter who they buy, in my view.
I mean, I do hate the narrative that people say, "Oh, he can now concentrate on the attacking players," as if he hasn't just come off a transfer window last summer where he spent almost £200 million on attacking players. I find it such a weird narrative. Oh, and he says it himself. Well, maybe we can concentrate more on sort of difference makers or however you want to describe it. But I do find it just a weird sort of concept. You've literally just spent the best part of £200 million on Gyökeres, Madueke, Zubimendi, etc. And Eze, yeah.
And you look at the final, right? Who they played? They played Trossard, Havertz, Saka. They played Lewis Skelly, Rice, Odegaard. And they played Hincapie's on loan. And they played Mosquera. So they actually spent £240 million net last summer. And not one player started in the final. So why giving him another £200 million? What's he going to change? His style of play is defensive. It's a bit like Simeone. It's completely like Simeone if you think about it, the way he plays football. So, look, they're going to give him a new contract, but I don't think they've got the money. You're going to have to sell. But now looking at who the players are going to sell. Martinelli, how much you can get for Martinelli? Unless Saudi come in for him. Trossard, you're not going to get much money for him. And they're even thinking about selling Ethan Nwaneri. I know probably for profit and loss sustainability rules. However, they'd be absolutely mad to sell him, in my view. So let's see what happens with Arsenal this summer. I really don't know where they're going to go. I mean, I was surprised they weren't interested in actually in Anthony Gordon for the €70 million just for a little bit of pace down the wing. But I don't know. Even if they go and buy a striker, say they're interested in Junior Krupi or Julian Alvarez, you're going to have to shift Havertz or Gyökeres. And good luck shifting those two for the money you want, kind of thing. So it was a pleasant evening. It was a pleasant day on Saturday when, as I said, Liverpool hadn't even played, and two great pieces of news, but there you go. And people ask me, why didn't you want Arsenal to win? It's because I don't want another English side who hasn't won a European Cup to win a European Cup, kind of thing. That's the biggest reason why. So Look, we'll move on to other news, what's going on in the world. I think Luke's actually just dropped off the stream there. So, anyway, so we're going to talk about transfers, I think, and because there's an awful lot of noise before the World Cup, and players want deals. So the latest deal yesterday was that Jan Diamonde, the Leipzig winger, Liverpool are interested. So are PSG. Now the rumoured price is 100 million euros. Leipzig want. I mean, that's a ridiculous price for a player that's played 46 games in the Bundesliga. Now, he has got pace. He's only 19. I mean, is that the going rate? I'm not too sure, but we'll see what's going on with him. Liverpool do need pace, obviously, and that's where the Premier League is going. Other transfers, we've got news. Where would Morgan Rogers? Obviously, he's had just coming off a fantastic season at Aston Villa, even. Now, there was some talk that Liverpool did an awful lot of work with him last summer, but that was with Slot and Hughes. Would he seek to revisit that with Liverpool and Iraola? I'm not too sure. Arsenal were talked about there, but if you go into Arsenal, where's he going to play? Is he going to play behind the striker, or is he going to play on the left-hand side? And this is another point on players going to Arsenal. If you're a top-end player, do you want to go and play for Arteta? Which we're just talking about Rodgers. And would you want to go and play for Arteta? I'm not too sure with Rodgers, but I think I spoke to you yesterday, Luke, about what Rodgers' contract like. What's he got? 4 years left in his contract. What's he on?
Yeah. I mean, he signed a new contract. You know, when he obviously, you got to remember when he joined Villa from Borough, it was only a very speculative transfer. It obviously a very highly regarded youngster, but the contract he first signed at Villa wasn't massive. And then obviously he had almost instant success really in that first. It took maybe 4 or 5 months, but towards the end, obviously we signed him in the January, and towards the end of that season, he was beginning to show real promise. And then he carried it on to the next year, and then I think he signed a new contract. So it was about the Christmas time after that. So he has a big contract now, a bit more sort of realistic with regard to his talents. I'm sure a big club will come in and offer him crazy money. And honestly, from a Villa perspective, the whole thing just gets a bit tiresome. Constantly having to sell your best players. But there's also reality that that's football. I think the aspect of it which gets annoying as a football fan is when it's teams like your Man United, or in this situation, let's say Tottenham this summer. If you know, certainly from a Villa and Newcastle perspective, if you see a Tottenham having finished 17th the last 2 seasons go and spend another £200 million on players this summer, you know, it really doesn't sit very well. And then you look at Man United and the amount of money that they've spent over the last 10 years, literally more than anyone, and how poor they've been on the pitch. It's one thing, this idea that performance on the pitch correlates with being able to go and spend money and this sort of stuff, but it's just not the case. And it really is a bit of a closed shop in terms of trying to break into those top 5 or 6 places.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like going on to Tottenham nicely. Like,
well, hold on. Let's just quickly go back to Rodgers one moment, right? If Villa were to lose Rodgers, I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world. I think when he's good, he's really good. But there were quite a few times last year where he was really poor, and I think one of the problems with the type of player he is that he isn't shy to try and make a pass or go on a run. And what you end up with is lots of games where he'll give the ball away a lot. And I think one of the benefits, or one of the things that someone like an Arsenal, if they were to sign him, would really benefit was the fact that he plays so many games. He doesn't look to have much in the way of injury problems and things like that. And he's a bit of a workhorse as well. And I think Arsenal could do a lot worse than sign him. But I think what you're in danger. So one of the interesting things with it is that Middlesbrough have a 20% sell-on clause for him. So that means any transfer fees people are talking, when people talk about 80 million for Rodgers, that isn't getting you Morgan Rodgers 80 million. Villa don't need to sell him in the same way that they have done previously. and with Middlesbrough potentially getting 16 million of that, then it's just, are Villa really going to be able to replace Morgan Rogers for 64 million pounds or whatever? It just isn't happening, and particularly if there's lots of clubs interested in him. Honestly, if the likes of Elliot Anderson are being talked about as £100 million players, and some of these other players, then a young English attacking player, you're talking big money.
Can I interest you if you did sell him Ndiaye from Everton?
I'd love to have Ndiaye, and honestly, if this is why I wouldn't be absolutely, this isn't like when Jack Grealish left, when Grealish was head and shoulders above the best other Villa player, right? He was playing on an unbelievable level. I think Rodgers is replaceable, and whether it be Ndiaye and others. I mean, that's the point. Is you're not. So one of the problems Villa had when they sold Grealish was ended up replacing him with Ings, Bailey, and Buendia. Now, it's ugly, and I think you saw even with Tottenham when they sold Bale, is they replaced him with I think 7 players. I think Ericsson was amongst them, but the rest was absolute garbage, and it's very difficult to replace superstars. But I do think for someone like Villa is that actually with the financial restrictions that they're under is, likes of I would happily take the likes of Somerville. I think Somerville looks, it depends on the price and everything else, but there's plenty of okay players out there who, would be able to do a pretty reasonable job. I think. I look, if I'm expecting Rodgers to leave Villa this summer. Am I going to be desperately upset about it? No, not really. And I think that probably tells you. I think if someone pays 100 million plus for him, they're reaching. I think, to be honest.
Yeah, as I was saying, if you go and buy Ndiaye and you go and buy Somerville, there's 2 players for replacement, and Somerville can play as a second striker and play on the left hand side. You can move Buendia in the middle. You need to obviously replace Bailey as well because he's not good enough. Sancho looks like he's going back to Dortmund, doesn't he? So you do need some squad fitters there. Not squad fitters, but players. You're playing Champions League football game next season. So, yeah, there's a load of players. Look at Tottenham. You briefly talked about Tottenham there. Yesterday they made a bid, or the night before, for Van Hecke at Brighton. He's got 1 year left in his contract, and Brighton wants 70 million British pounds for one of the most overrated centre-backs. Now, he's great on the ball, don't get me wrong, but as an actual defender, I don't rate him at all. But where does that leave Tottenham and the current centre-backs? They've got Romero, Van der Ven, Dragusin, Danso, and the young lad who is on loan at the moment,
Vaskovic,
who they'll probably send out on loan again because they haven't got any European football. But wouldn't be surprised if other clubs come in and say, hang on a minute here, you're going out on loan again, you're not playing, you're highly rated, one of the most highly rated, sought after centre-backs in European football as a kid. So they're going to have to make some big decisions. You can't just go on spending 60, 70 million pounds on a backup in Van Hecke. He's going there as a first choice. Well, and Senesi isn't going to go to...
You've got Senesi in the mix there as well.
I know. Senesi's not going to go to Tottenham, in my view, and be a backup to Van der Ven.
Well, okay, so... we've talked to John about this offline, because obviously being a Spurs fan, and, his attitude generally is that, more than happy to have 4 quality centre-backs and everything else. But I'm more in sort of the camp of, right, you bring in Senesi. Senesi plays on the left. So one thing I don't think people quite appreciate is the importance with centre-backs is which side they play, whether they play on the left side or the right side. And what you have with Senesi generally plays spent all his time at Bournemouth playing on the left-hand side, okay? Is Van der Ven plays on that left-hand side. So unless De Zerbi goes with a back 3, is Senesi coming in, and he's not going to come in he's not coming in on a free transfer to be backup to Van der Ven. So what, unless they're playing a back 3, and then at which point, it would make a little bit more sense. But then obviously, I think Romero will go. I think there has to be some consequences to what's happened in the last 2 years in terms of performance, attitude, everything else. Now, obviously Atletico Madrid seems like the most natural fit going, but I also question whether Atletico Madrid want to go and spend. I think of Romero slightly as a bit of a distressed asset. He clearly has attitude problems. I don't think there's a huge market for him. I don't think there's tons and tons of teams desperate to sign him.
It's only Atletico Madrid, really, because no one in Italy can afford what Tottenham want for him. He's not going to Bayern Munich, and he's not going to Barcelona because they've got other issues they want to go on. They've just bought Gordon, they want to buy Alvarez. So Atletico Madrid, the only money. Yeah, it is a good point, and maybe Tottenham are going to go to 3 at the back in some games, and they want 4 centre backs for 3 positions. But it's a strange buy. I mean, I think Brighton would be quite happy to get rid of Van Hecker, actually. For 70 million quid, I think they'd be absolutely delighted.
All right, what number? All right, what's a reason? What is a reasonable number? So, I mean, we talk about contracts, messing contracts up. That's one that Brighton have messed up, right?
Yeah.
There's no getting away from this, right? They can ask for, how much Van Hecker? 70 million. Well, you aren't getting 70 million. You know what? You're not getting 60 million. You shouldn't be getting 50 million, right? If you've got a year left on your deal, you shouldn't really be, almost any player, you shouldn't really be getting more than 30.
Well, that's what Liverpool were trying to pay for Mark Gay last summer, wasn't it? 35 million pounds, didn't they? So that's probably the asking price, and probably Tottenham.
That's a fair bench. I mean, that's a fair benchmark, and the reality is Brighton will not want to lose him for that amount of money because it's very difficult to replace.
Yeah, there's not actually. Well, we just don't know with Brighton. That's the key, to get into Brighton's data and find out who their next guy they want to go and buy. But yeah, that's probably what Tottenham gone in with, because they look at Mark Gay, classic player, 1 year out of contract, similar age to Van Hecker as well, 25, 26, 1 year left. A similar stature of club as Palace and Brighton at the time. And they've gone, well, £35 million, take it or leave it. Or we'll buy him in 6 months' time and we'll spend £15 million on him. Or we'll buy him a year and we'll spend 0.
I'll take Gerhi over Van Hekke all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously, there's lots of interesting transfer stuff. Talk about Anderson. So, Man City have obviously had a bid for Anderson rejected. I mean, we've talked about it on this pod for a long time. It looks like Anderson to City's... It's difficult to say it's a done deal because obviously no transfer fees have been agreed, but it's looked likely and on the cards now for months. I expect it to get done. You'd expect it to be done before the World Cup as well. I think it raises a couple of interesting things. So one is obviously what valuation that they end up getting for him and where that sort of sits relative to your Rice deal, the Caicedo deal, some of these other deals as a benchmark, because I think it also then has an impact on potentially things like the Rodgers deal and other big transfers. And the other aspect to it is about the charges facing Man City. So they continue on as if they're innocent. There's no doubt in their minds that 115 charges are going to be found guilty and any of the sort of repercussions from that. Business as normal. Could you imagine if Anderson signs for Man City and then finds himself as a League 2 player, James?
I can't, no. But he must be asking questions, surely, if you're a player. You're asking questions, what's going on? If you're going to sign for them, surely, if you're an Elliot Anderson. But I think that these big transfers don't just happen overnight. These have been worked on for months and months and months regarding bonuses and what etc's in your contract. They don't just suddenly agree and then you go in, sign a contract a day later when everything like that is, everything's agreed before as a player. It's just agreement of the payment with the other club, isn't it? So yeah, look, I think he's a good player. And is he worth £100 million? But what is a £100 million player now, kind of thing? So Man City do need midfielders because obviously Bernardo Silva's left and he's got a decision to make with him where he goes Barcelona or Atletico, and then you're looking at Rodri needs legs around him and he's only got a year left in his contract. So in the next 18 months, Man City, well, they urgently need a midfielder now, and they probably need 2, arguably, because I don't think Nico Gonzalez or Reinders are They're backups.
Okay.
They're not top class Premier League players.
If I had to spend £100 million on a midfielder, I wouldn't be buying Anderson.
Who do you be buying?
I would go to Chelsea and say, I'll have Casado, thanks.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Because I just think there's different levels in this game. Casado's form's dipped a little bit at the back end of this season, but I think a lot of that's to do with the situation he's found himself in. I think he's genuinely an elite central midfielder. I don't think there's loads of them. I think Chelsea have to be a seller, given their financial situation. And I think if you came up with the right deal, that you could potentially get him out of Chelsea.
Talking of centre midfielders, how much would you pay for Adam Wharton?
I wouldn't pay 100 million. I do think in the right situation, he's obviously going to be worth a lot of money to someone. But people have to be really careful with him. He isn't like some defensive midfielder. It's his vision on the ball. It's his ability his passing ability. And it's amazing when you watch him, like in terms of just his spatial awareness of what's around him and his ability to execute as well. I think Palace are going to miss him so badly if he goes. I think you'd be looking in the 70, 80 million pound range, that type of number. And it's weird. I see Man United. Are they going to buy? Surely they're going to buy another central midfielder. But what I don't know, for example, is I don't know if I'd have a Wharton and Bruno Fernandes in the same team. For example, I feel like a bit of a luxury to have two players like that in the same team.
I really rate Adam Wharton. His ability to play with both feet and pick a pass is... There's not an English midfielder who can do what he can do. The worry about him is he does pick up a little niggles here and there. He gets booked regularly because he lunges into tackles when he doesn't need to. As you say, he's not a defensive midfielder, he's a ball-playing midfielder. And you would need someone around him who has legs so he can do the dirty work, i.e. a Casado, or back in the day, a Casemiro when he was mid-20s, or remember Fabinho or Kante or someone like that, or someone who go round, kick people, give me the ball, and then we can move on. When we lose it, you go and kick someone, get the ball back, give it to me, kind of thing. 5-yard passes, then he can dominate and control the game. I love him. I'd take him at Liverpool all day. But Liverpool would also need to go and buy a defensive midfielder, or, as I say, a player similar to what I've just described. Alex Scott?
I think Alex Scott's a tricky one because obviously when he first went to Bournemouth from Bristol, I think, what was it, Bristol City?
Yeah, for £25 million, yeah.
And... he was obviously always highly touted, and I think the players in the Championship are interesting because if you look over the years, there's been a lot of obviously good ones, and including Wharton, who we just talked about from Blackburn, and Alex Scott clearly has something. He's a little bit special, and there aren't that many really good central midfielders around. Now, what I don't know with him is just how good he is. Like, I find it quite difficult in like a Bournemouth team to evaluate just quite how good he is. I don't know. He obviously looks very composed on the ball. He can do some of the ugly work as well. It's not just a ball player. But again, he is alongside. When Tyler Adams is there, Tyler Adams does all that donkey work for him. And so it does give you a little bit of a freedom to be a bit more expressive, should we say?
Yeah, I'm high on him. I think you get him for 50 or 60 million pounds. He's not made his debut.
I wouldn't want to be right. I wouldn't want to be. I don't think I'd be wanting to pay 60 million for Scott where he is at the moment. I don't. So I think this is one of the problems you have with like even a Rodgers is everyone says 100 million, 110 million, whatever. I don't think Rodgers is the finished article. Honestly, I think there's still some development there. I think we're very quick these days to and it's the same with Anderson a little bit. For Anderson, you're paying let's say you're paying 100, 105, 110 million. You're paying a fee which is for a player who's a completely finished product, a superstar, right? I'm not sure Anderson may turn out to be a superstar, right? But the version of Anderson at this minute, I'm not necessarily convinced is a superstar in terms of world-class superstar. I'm not. He may turn out to be that, but there's too many games I've seen, for Forest where he's gone missing, and he's going to go into a club and expect to dominate games. You go to a Man City, you're expected to dominate games. You're going to have tons of possession. And I wonder with an Anderson whether is he as good on the ball as he needs to be for, you lose the likes of Silva in there and Rodri for Man City. They're two unbelievable players with the ball at their feet. To just come in and replace one of them, it's difficult.
No, sure. The thing you go back to is Declan Rice. I think he's exactly the same situation. He was at a similar club stature, just won the Conference League at West Ham kind of thing. I mean, Forest, if they were in the Conference League, they probably would have won that ahead of Palace. Well, but you know what I mean? It's kind of thing. And they're looking at going, well, similar type of player. And I think Declan Rice has gone on to Arsenal, we all know, to be a top-class player. I think he's short of what everyone thinks he is, personally. But Eddie Anderson, look, 2.5 years ago, he was playing as a 10. And he essentially went to Nottingham Forest for £15 million, like 2 years ago kind of thing. And now he's moved backwards into a 6. But he's not a natural 6. He's not a natural defensive midfielder. He does get forward. I do like his passing range, that he can thread a ball and he's tenacious and he understands the league.
Yeah, but he's not a Wharton. Hold on, he's not a Wharton level passer.
No, he's not an elite level passer. He is a good passer of the ball, don't get me wrong.
I know,
and
but we're talking about we're talking about £100 million player. So it's the one negative I've had of Declan Rice is I don't think his range of passing is truly elite to be considered. I think that's what holds him back, but I think his range of passing, for example, isn't as good as some people almost make out, should we say, in terms of they always talk about him being a complete midfielder and everything else, right? I think there's certain holes that he has in his game.
Yeah, just look at the Champions League final when he was after Vitinha and João Neves, how they can manipulate the ball and pass the ball whenever they want.
But going back to the Scott situation, right? So you're talking about £60 million, right? I don't know how much you would pay for Scott, right? But I've also, we're talking about these players. We're talking about you're almost paying top money for players as if they are the player you hope they're going to be. It's weird. You're paying so much for potential nowadays rather than actually the finished product. And I think that would be my worry with Scott is, yes, Scott has improved a lot, obviously, since being in the Championship. He's on the right sort of trajectory. But he's not. I'm not sure he's quite there yet.
No, I agree with you. However, that's probably the going rate, isn't it, for an English midfielder, as talked about earlier, about there is a Premier League tax. And I never really understood the Premier League tax, the reason why. And now I kind of understand it in terms of players coming from abroad take time to get used to the Premier League. And at least he's been in the Premier League and he's physically big enough as well, Alex Scott. And he's got the mobility to get around the pitch. I think he's a good player. I really do think, and he should be in the England World Cup squad. I know he's one of these travelling reserves, and he'll probably make his debut tomorrow night against New Zealand.
He's not a patch on Jordan Henderson, so.
But I think he's a much better player than Kobbie Mainoo. And how much were people talking about Kobbie Mainoo? So. Yeah,
but Mainoo's a good example, right? So, hasn't played for however many months under manager, right?
Aaron.
Suddenly. He has a bit of a renaissance under Carrick, and suddenly he's obviously gets a new contract as well. That's the type of stuff that drives me crazy. Is literally he clearly wasn't performing in training, or there was something amiss with Amorim, and suddenly a few okay games. I wouldn't say he's been amazing for United. I mean. And he gets a new contract and in the England squad and for the World Cup, and it just, I don't know, it just seems such a overreaction. People seem to forget what happened in the previous 18 months.
I think he's only in England squad. He plays for Man United. Another midfielder, the last midfielder I want to talk about is Matheus Fernandes at relegated West Ham.
I mean,
I
the
mean,
numbers. I mean, we talked about, right. We just touched on it. The numbers being, banded around of 80 million and this. Honestly, it feels very, very punchy. Yes, he's had some games where he looked good for West Ham. Okay, but again, there's different levels to this. There's one thing looking good in a West Ham team that's got relegated. I always take the thing with something like this West Ham team, and everyone's, is always like, oh, obviously you've got Somerville, you've got Bowen, you've got Castellanos, you've got Fernandes, you've got this player, Bowen, whoever, right? They got relegated for a reason, because they weren't good enough. And it's not to say that they don't have good players within that team, but this idea that suddenly 5 or 6 of that team are all 50, 60 million pound plus players just seems a bit of a nonsense. As John pointed out recently, is West Ham's defence has been dreadful. Fernandes is a part of that situation.
it's a lot of money for a relegated team to start saying, I want £80 million for a player, rumoured £80 million for a player when he's, 21? Last 2 seasons got relegated. Not obviously all his fault. Look, he is another good player, but the fees are absolutely ridiculous, aren't they, really? They are ridiculous.
But that's also why. One thing I would say with John is that actually the best value you find in the market are actually the elite players. So your Casado at 100 million or whatever seems a little bit punchy at the time, but you're buying an elite player. Even take a Rice, fine. Is actually the top players tend to be better value than all the ones in that 50, 60, 70 million pound range, who all have question marks for various reasons.
Rather spend the big money and get the elite, the top 5 or 10 players kind of thing in world football kind of thing, or at least the 2 or 3 best players in that position for the money, rather than spending a player on 60 and then having to spend someone else, and you kind of matching kind of thing when you go and get a player that can be at your club for 10 years and be brilliant at your club for 10 years.
So, just want to touch on young lad Jeremy Monga at Leicester. So, I've known about him for ages because a friend is a Leicester fan. Been going on about him for ages. He's been linked with Arsenal this week, and heavily linked with Arsenal this week. It's just, I find it such a shame when you get these elite young talents at the age of 16, 17 who just literally get poached by teams like Liverpool, Arsenal, whoever it may be. But it tends to be, and they come in offering crazy wages for these players that these other teams can't compete with. And if I'm Monga, surely he should look at the situation that's happened with Nwaneri in terms of the lack of opportunity he's had in terms of first team football at Arsenal. I mean, Nwaneri is an incredible prospect, okay? But he's just not getting a look in. If I'm Monga, the last place he should be looking at going is honestly one of the big 3 or 4 teams, because you just get lost in amongst all the other amazing young players, but you have a lack of opportunity in these clubs. He needs to be playing football. Go and play elsewhere. There'll be plenty of other Premier League teams or top Championship teams. Whoever it is, the boy needs to be playing football. And I just think, I know why it happens, but it just feels so wrong.
I agree with you. These kids need to be playing football. Just one thing at Liverpool. Liverpool don't actually pay these big wages that everyone talks about for these kids. They've got a regulation at the club where they don't actually pay decent money or any sort of big wages until they sign professional contracts. So, Joshua Abe, who's just re-signed, who's the latest talent at Liverpool, he's only 15 at the moment, but he's not signing. He signed a scholarship until he's 17 when he gets money. There's rumours that Man City offered him 50 grand a week when he turned 16. I mean, it's just ridiculous kind of thing. And thankfully, he turned it down, which was surprising considering who his agent is. And his agent is a brother of the player who's gone to win the Ballon d'Or at Real Madrid 12 months ago, but we won't rename his name because he's just actually been replaced at Real Madrid by a certain Dutch lad. But Denzel Dumfries is the player I'm talking about. He's gone to Real Madrid from Inter Milan to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold. Yeah, Monga, a lot of clubs will want him. But yes, you're right. He needs to go and play football because there's no point sitting in reserve because reserve team football is not worth its salt for these players. Young under 21 football as well. They're way too good for it as well. They need to go. It's like Max Darman, classic example to say. Now I'm wary at Arsenal. They need to be playing football nowadays because not all the time, not like Barcelona levels where they play Pedri, Yamal, and Gavi and play 50, 60 games a season. But they need to be playing at least 20 games of men's professional football to understand what it takes to be a professional footballer, kind of thing.
I think my big pet hate with it is the teams selling these players or having these players poached off them literally never get paid the appropriate sort of fee for them. You know, I always hark back to that Harvey Elliott deal from Fulham when Liverpool signed him. Everyone knew he was going to be a top player. And Fulham just get absolutely rinsed. You know, until they have a situation where, you know, yes, the fee may be a token fee, 5, 6, 7 million or whatever the number is. But until they actually have something in there which says something along the lines of, you know, like a 30% sell-on fee or, you know, if you play for England, you know, that's going to cost 15 or 20 million pounds and actually have something really meaningful as a reward for the team who actually coached and developed the young kid. You know, it's just going to keep happening. And the disparity between the haves and have-nots just gets bigger.
Yeah, the tribunal fees are a bit of a nonsense to say the least, really. They just doesn't help the smaller clubs one iota.
So Harvey Elliott will be an interesting one, just quickly. Obviously, he's not coming back to Villa. He's basically had a wasted year in his career. You know, and I guess it'd be interesting to see if Iraola sees any place for him in the squad at Liverpool. I mean, we don't know that. You've no idea, James. Huh?
He's had 2 wasted years. He played no football under Slot last season. He's played no football this season. He's got no chance at Liverpool. He's just not a Liverpool player. He's not quick enough for Iraola's team. He's not got the real high-level technical ability either. He's not got the legs. So I think he's a classic example of a player that should go abroad, play in a league that's slower, the way that he can actually sit there as a 10 or play as a narrow forward and go to Germany or go to Italy or somewhere like that, 15, 20 million pound player and move on. I don't think he's a Premier League. I think he's a Premier League player, but I don't think the Premier League has gone that way for him, if you get what I mean. I think he's too not physical enough, not big enough to play the top end where he wants to play anyway.
Are you excited for Diamonde to join for £100 million, James, from Leipzig?
2 points. I've seen extremely little of him. In fact, pretty much nothing of him. There's only what I listen to him, watch him on clips, but clips are just irrelevant in my view. He won't cost. Again, I'd be very surprised if Liverpool play anywhere close to £100 million up front, considering what they paid last year for Wirtz, who's a generational talent, £100 million up front. And £16 million. Well, Liverpool can't pay £116 million.
Hold on, James. Generational talent. Is this a lost generation or something? Because I ain't seeing a generational talent at the moment.
Well, let's see under a proper manager. But anyway, look, Liverpool seen. I just don't know. But with Diamonde, just not seen enough of him, to be honest. But it seems an awful lot of money for, as I said earlier. I think when you jumped off there for a 19-year-old lad who's played 46 professional games. It seems an awful lot of money.
We need to touch on Madrid a little bit, just quickly. So obviously Mourinho is the new manager, and they've signed Canate, as you touched on earlier. They've signed Dumfries, and so sort of rejigged the defence a little bit. But what's interesting around Madrid is obviously they have presidential elections at the moment, and you're finding the different candidates are promising all sorts for their votes. And last night we had Perez came out and said that he was going to sign a £150 million player from a Champions League team, you know, not a Premier League team. So we don't quite know which team or player he's talking about. And there's some speculation he wants to sign up to 5 players, and then the other candidate, he said he promised he'd be signing Haaland. So it's all just a bit of a nonsense, really. It's all a bit of fun and games. But I think what it does demonstrate a little bit is just the power of Madrid and the pull that Real Madrid have. In that, if Real Madrid come calling for Haaland, I suspect that while City obviously wouldn't want to lose him, it's very difficult to say no to Real Madrid.
Yeah, just for information, the Real Madrid elections is going to be held on Sunday, the 7th of June. So, yeah, Perez coming out last night after the young lad saying, holding up a Haaland shirt with number 9 on the back. Like, what are you doing? Man City were absolutely fuming, and quite rightly are fuming about that. That Perez will probably get in, and they've obviously signed those two lads, and Mourinho. With Mourinho, they're going to have to spend 17 million euros as well to get him out to Benfica. That's what Benfica compensation they want. Who, by the way, have just appointed Marco Silva from Fulham as his replacement. But would be quite funny if the young lad, 37-year-old, got in as the president. He won't do, because Florentino Perez has run Real Madrid for the last 25 years. So, yeah. But it is the power of Real Madrid. They are the biggest club in the world, and they do it their way.
It was humorous. I saw a clip on Twitter earlier of Arsenal fan. I think he's one of the Arsenal fan TV guys. Was on TalkSport, and he was trying to say with a straight face that Arsenal were a bigger draw now than Real Madrid were. It's like, really.
Real Madrid. Just thinking about it, Dean Huijsen, obviously gone there, big money last summer. Had an absolute shocking season. I know it's a complete car crash at Madrid with Alonso to Arbeloa, now presidential elections, probably Jose coming back. Didn't make the Spanish squad. No Real Madrid's in the Spanish squad, which is unbelievable. Would he be... So they bought Canate. Looks like Rudiger's going to sign on. Alaba's left. They've got a couple of young lads as well. Is he going to stay there, or would you chuck in someone like... I still think he's a good centre-back kind of thing.
But I think what that shows you the dangers a little bit of going to a big club before you've properly developed. You've got to make sure you're ready for that step up to go to a big club. And yeah, I mean, he clearly, obviously, when you go to arguably the biggest club in the world, the scrutiny, the pressure on you, it's not a place to be developing. You have to be finished article.
Yeah, one to keep an eye on, I think, Dean Huijsen at Madrid.
One player who does interest me a little bit is Marcus Rashford. So obviously Gordon going to Barcelona was so left field, literally, that I don't know what's going to happen with Rashford. I think he was, he's loved his time at Barcelona. He's a Barcelona fan, but when you're talking about needing 25-30 million to sign him on a permanent deal, and then they go and sign Anthony Gordon, who plays in his position, unless they're going to sign both, seems unlikely. What happens to Rashford? Obviously, he could go back to United. Would he want to go back to United, given the history there? It feels unlikely. I don't know. It just leaves him in quite a tricky situation.
Would he want to come back to the Premier League? I probably wouldn't if I were Rashford. I'd probably want to stay abroad, kind of thing. I wonder if someone like a Bayern Munich would be interested in him.
Well, they've got Diaz.
I know, but if you can get Rashford and you can get him on, say, 15 million, 20 million quid, because Man United don't want him at the end of the summer, and the price is not 30 million euros, it's 15 million euros. Would he go to Inter Milan and tear it up in Inter?
He can come back to Villa, James. Play Champions League football.
I wouldn't be against, but I don't think he wants to play in the Premier League. I think that's probably the reason why he's quite happy out the spotlight kind of thing, living a life. No,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. It's an option for him because I think Villa would take him, right? So his agent might go and look at all the various other options, and I saw Tottenham linked with him actually, which I thought would be weird. I'd struggle. That would be a weird one. But yeah, anything else to talk about, James?
Regarding football, no, not really. There's obviously the World Cup starts the 11th, so 6 days' time kind of thing. So I think we said we're going to do a podcast on Monday with John regarding the World Cup and just looking at the World Cup and looking at past World Cups. I actually was watching some things last night from the 1990 1994 World Cups and just see what it was like. And in the 94 World Cup, I think it was, Argentina went out of the group when they went out of the group on goals against, I think they scored, because 3 teams all had 6 points, scored 6 goals and conceded 2 and 3, so they came third in the group kind of thing. Just Italy, they lost their first game, obviously lost in the final on penalties. So Italy, because the Republic of Ireland beaten them 1-0 in New York, Ray Houghton scored that goal over Pagliuca back in the day. And then Italy went down to 10 men in their second group game. Pagliuca got sent off and they managed to win, scrape a 1-0 win. Dino Baggio scored from a header. Watching it back last night, I kind of remember it slightly, but I don't remember it fully, obviously. So that's how the fine margins in football. They were going out if they hadn't won that game. And they got to the final, obviously. Brazil went on to win and won, I think, probably the worst World Cup final we've seen in a long time, kind of thing. When it was 0-0 and went to penalties, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Was it something Arteta would have been proud of, James?
He would have been extremely proud of it. He'd probably watched that game numerous times and gone, that's the way to play a final kind of thing. And be the underdogs with £1 billion spent. Yeah. No, actually, like, it's been a long time since I've really watched international football. Just because it's boring, it's slower pace, players aren't used to playing with each other. They don't get together that often. It doesn't excite me as football. I kind of sometimes want to break with football because I've got a lot of passion for other sports going on, kind of thing as well. So I kind of like the 3 months you get off during the summer or 2 months off. But I won't watch all of it because the game's on at silly times here in London. But
I'm just genuinely happy that we do not have to watch Gareth Southgate ruin a generation of players.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I was looking actually then Netflix on, remember the 1998 World Cup, and I watched the 10-minute highlights of England Argentina in the second round in, I think it was St Etienne, they said on commentary. And England's team that day, if you think about it, David Seaman in goal, they played 3 at the back. They played Gary Neville, Tony Adams and Sol Campbell as a back 3. They played Graham Lasso and Darren Anderson as wing backs. They played Beckham, Batty, David Batty, the Leeds player, and Paul Ince. And up front they had Shearer and Owen. It was a half-decent team. More than a half-decent team. And they obviously went 1-0 down to a penalty after 6 minutes, Batistuta. And then they got a dodgy penalty, Michael Owen, dived, Shearer, great penalty. And then Owen scored that goal. And then Scholes missed a great chance to make it 3-1 before Simeone or Zanetti scored that free kick under that great type of free kick. So yeah, it's and then Campbell should have scored, but it wasn't given. But yeah, fun times.
Fine margins, James. But we'll talk all about World Cup on Monday. But yeah, I think that's it for today.
Yeah, just about the sport actually this weekend. There's actually a good weekend of sport if you think about it. You've got the cricket still going on at Lords, which was a fun day yesterday at Lords if you're a bowler, not as a batsman kind of thing.
Is it going to make the weekend, James?
Probably not. Be a 2-day test match, which the CEO of Lords won't be happy about. You've also got the F1 Monaco. I did see that George Russell came out yesterday and did the old trick of saying all the pressure's on Kimi Antonelli and trying to use that. I mean, if George Russell doesn't win the title this year, will he ever win it kind of thing? Antonelli looks a real talent there. You got the boxing back on Sky Sports here in the UK. You got Chris Bidham-Smith under Zuffa with Dana White, his new foray into boxing. And Chris Bidham-Smith coming out saying, I want all the big fights, but I'm not sure at my stage in my career I want title fights. That's because, mate, you can't fight in world title fights anymore. So, kind of saying that. And Eddie Hearn's beef still with Dana White regarding, obviously, Tom Aspinall and other things as well with Conor Benn. So that's quite entertaining on the side there. Eddie Hearn's a bit like Marmite, really, isn't he? He's quite a good chap. But yeah, and then Rugby Union UK and Ireland still goes on. And horse racing from Epsom. So you've got the Oaks this afternoon. And tomorrow you've got the Derby. And Aidan O'Brien and Cornwall are going for 4 victories in a row. Buviento Cooney, it's a 2-1 favourite, I think he is, under Ryan Moore. There's one horse in there that I'll be backing just for the name, James J. Baddock of Joseph O'Brien. 10-1. I'll be backing him just from things to my bit. So yeah, good day of racing tomorrow at Epsom.
And the French Open tennis final, tennis semi-finals and final over the weekend as well. So there's been loads of shocks in both men's and women's events. So Sinner not there, Djokovic not there. Obviously Alcaraz is injured, so we will see some new champions.
Yeah, Zverev looks like he's.
So Zverev's he's the massive favourite to win it. Yeah.
And in the women's draw, you've got the final tomorrow. You've got a teenager, the Russian teenager, I've forgotten her name, and they've got a qualifier who's never got past the second round in a major, and it's only her third ever major competition, a qualifier. So yeah, women's tennis view, it's a shake-up. And another sport I love is you've got all roads leading to the Tour de France, which starts in 4 weeks. You've got the old Criterium du Dauphiné, which starts on Sunday, I believe. But Pogacar's not riding. The new superstar in cycling, is Paul Ciexas, the French lad de Casson. He's only 19, but he's been putting some figures up on his bike in recent days on Strava, I think it is, they use kind of thing, is it? I'm not entirely sure what they use, but going up the Tourmalet, etc., which is a massive mountain in the Alps, and it's looking really promising. So although Tadej Pogacar is the odds-on favourite, we just don't know about this young kid. And Vingegaard obviously won the Giro last weekend as well, so he's riding it, hopefully. So he could have an exciting Tour de France coming on in 4 weeks' time, I believe.
I'm not going to lie, James. I'll be watching absolutely zero cycling. I do not have time. So there are 2 other sports going on at the moment. We have the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So you've got San Antonio Spurs against New York Knicks. New York Knicks won the first game on Wednesday night. So long time since the Knicks have won it. Spurs lucked out when they got Wembanyama or Wemby. Let's call him Wemby. In the draft unexpectedly, generational talent, and whether he can carry them to glory. And you also weirdly have Stanley Cup ice hockey going on at the moment as well. So there is a lot of stuff. I think it's Carolina against Las Vegas Golden Knights. So loads and loads of top quality sport at the moment elsewhere.
You've also got the shenanigans going on in the NFL on and off the pitch, and the trades that are going on, and the certain individuals have been naughty individuals, and certain authorities are having a little tap on the shoulder and saying, "Come and have a word with us," kind of thing. So yeah, I saw. Was it Russell Wilson retired yesterday?
I don't know actually. I didn't see that.
I think it was.
That news escaped me.
Yeah, so all fun and games when you wake up in the morning, you read The Athletic over here, what's going on in NFL, what's the trades are going on, or whatever's going on off the field, yeah.
I mean, there's only so much time for all the sport, James. But right, let's call it a day, and we'll catch up on Monday. Talk World Cup.
Yeah, have a good weekend, all. Bye-bye.